Michele Green. My role is Assistant Curator for the South West Heritage Trust. I've worked in museums, both regional and national museums, for the last 16 years. And my specialism, I come from an decorative art background. So my role at the South West Heritage Trust, the main part of my role, the central aspect, is to support the South West Heritage Trust partnership with Weston Museum. So it's an exciting and diverse role. So I do lots to do with, I deliver the collections management programme and create temporary exhibitions for Weston. I also do lots of curatorial content for projects and activities alongside the curatorial team. But there's also a lot of doing research and interpretation, but also daily administrative documentation of the collections. So I do that for the North Somerset Collection. So that's documenting things that come into the museum, updating the database, and lots of different answering inquiries and that sort of thing.
So how do you first become involved with heritage and the things that museums do? Because it sounds like you've come into it kind of sideways almost.
Not particularly sideways. So I've always been interested in heritage. So when I grew up, my parents took me around to lots of National Trust properties and museums, and it was an important part of what we did and where we went. So I grew up and I developed this passion for objects and what they tell us about people. There's lots of artists in our family, so that's where the art interest really came from. So I have a 4 times great grandfather who was an illustrator for Victorian Punch and other periodicals. So I used to love to go see his work at the V&A, and I grew up looking at his books he illustrated. So that's kind of art's background. And then from there, I suppose I loved art history so much and art. I went to university. I took a combination of doing fine art with art history. So I did that for a while, and then had a little gap after university trying to work out what I wanted to do. And I missed art history so much. I then decided I wanted to work with it in museums. So then I went off and I did a postgraduate diploma in museums and collections management. So that's really my route in. And then it was lots of different contracts, gaining all the experience, everything from collections assistant to documentation officer, to then most recently, prior to this role, was assistant curator for the art collection at Ram Museum in Exeter.
I see. Oh, okay, so an interesting route, and from the sound of it, a very interesting childhood. You seem to have embraced what most children try to run away from.
Yeah.
Would that be true?
I think there was no escaping.
Most young children, museums, art galleries, or somewhere they get dragged around on a school trip. But from the sound of it, you with your parents and family, you really embraced it. Would that be fair to say?
Definitely, absolutely. I think it helped that one of my uncle was actually a landscape painter, so I used to go over to Dartmoor where he lived, and I used to see, and I kind of grew up with his work on the walls, and it was just amazing to have a living sort of artist and being influenced by his work.
Really saw it from the interesting side then.
Yes, I think that's the main thing that really grabbed my attention.
Okay, so now that Southwest Heritage have been lucky enough to get you, well, where would you like to see the collection and your role? Where would you like to see it going in the future?
Well, I'm really passionate about making collections accessible to everybody. So especially with this COVID crisis at the moment, it's shown how important it is to make collections accessible digitally. So I'd really love to work further, because I'm actually working on a project to make more of the North Somerset collections available digitally. So I'd like to increase that to make so people from wherever they are can access the collections, because as most collections, you can only ever see a very small proportion that's on display in the museum. But it's so interesting and so important to see the breadth of the collections. So I would like to make more available digitally and to
and of course digitally you can impart far more information. You know, in the actual museum context, you can only have a card about that object so big, otherwise people lose interest. Whereas if they're sat at home on their own couch, they will probably go on and read more. Do you think that, and especially with youngsters today, because technology is their thing, and if they can sit nice and comfortably and look at everything, you know, and actually read something, if something piques their interest, they can then go further into it. You know, is that the kind of thing that you're looking at promoting?
Well, just making people aware that you can do digital trails, you can have digital exhibitions, and you, as you said, you can take things a whole different level. You can have links, and you can take people to more in-depth information if they're interested. Whereas if you're in a crowded, say, gallery, then sometimes it's off-putting, and you can't take it all in when you're looking at, say, the 14th picture. But if you're at home and you can go and look at something online, it can just give another level, but it never takes away from seeing the actual object, because that's still very, very important. But it's just another tool, but, really.
But from an information point of view, I'm like, I know I'm a bit older, but I'm fully in favor of using technology in this way, because Google has become the new version of go to the library and get a book.
Definitely, and it's so much easier, isn't it?
It is.
You don't have to worry about opening times.
No, exactly. It's there 24/7, which is
exactly,
you know,
when
you can look at it when you think about it.
Yes, definitely.
Again, to my mind. So that obviously, yes, you want to embrace technology and go along with getting that, as well as being able to see, as you say, and touch.
Yes, but it's just another way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, or I feel it is anyway. So, have you got any real pet hates or loves about museums and their collections and the way that they do things?
My love is art and decorative art. That's my main thing. Although I love many different collections, I have experienced through all different collections within the 16 years. I'm most drawn, in terms of art, I'm most drawn to Victorian art, Pre-Raphaelites, the Newland School. But being at RAM Museum and working as curator for art, it really opened my eyes and broadened my experience. And I learnt to love modern art, such as the work of the abstract work of Patrick Heron, but also Barbara Hepworth and her hospital paintings are absolutely incredible. So whilst I was there, I saw a real need, because most art collections, there's a real imbalance between male and female, because art history has always, from the Victorian period onwards, concentrated really on the male artist. So most art collections are very imbalanced. So at RAM, I was really passionate about trying to balance the male and the female and to make new acquisitions. So I was lucky enough to get funding for a work by Gillian Ayres, a contemporary abstract artist. And then I held an exhibition on women artists to kind of put them in the spotlight. So there was a really important work that hadn't been on display for 20 years. It was a work by a Victorian artist called Lucy Kemp Welsh. And she did an amazing history picture, which showed the Boer War and a very young Winston Churchill. So this was the star work in the exhibition. And we did a whole fundraising to get it conserved and then to put it out. And then the rest of the exhibition really was pulled together around this one star picture. I'm also really passionate about decorative arts, Delftware, Chinese porcelain, also Victorian arts and crafts, such as the potters such as the Martin brothers. They're fantastic. So these are all my loves, but I also really interested in social history, ethnography, costume collections, and really my tastes and my loves are always evolving. As I go to a new collection and I find out new things, and it opens my eyes to something else, and then a whole new passion can sort of be born, really.
So every day is a school day.
Every day is a school day, and I love researching and learning about objects and actually being able to improve our understanding of the people who use them, and also about that object, so we can tell more about it in its story. Yes.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful, Michele, because it is so nice to, very often people in your kind of position, they get there and they stop learning, whereas you still seem very open-minded and want to look at other and different things within collections. So
Definitely.
also the ordinary everyday people's view of things like this. You know, it's one of my passions that, you know, older people, or every person, has got a story to tell. And
Definitely.
The rich and the famous, they're all documented. But it is nice to collect the stories of the Joe Blogs in the street.
Absolutely.
And this is obviously somewhere that you like to look at as well.
Definitely, because you can relate far more to somebody from everyday walk of life, and then their story can become more real from the objects that they've used and been passionate about. So absolutely.
And of course, with older people, very often, you know, when their demise comes, their stories go as well. Whereas, well, it's something that personally I'm trying to do, is to record some of these stories so that they will be there in 100 years' time. If somebody wants to look at it.
It's so important, and actually to have that person's voice talking about their experience.
Yes,
it's just another
makes
level.
Things so much more real.
It does. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media at Weston Museum.